Some people carry concealed as much as my deputy sheriffs do, and they're probably just as ready mentally and skill set wise to deal with a deadly threat as my deputies are. But unless you're willing to take that on, don't get yourself in the worst situation by buying a gun and thinking because you have a firearm that that's going to save you, without the situational awareness and the training and everything that goes with that type of defense system in your safety plan. Does that make sense? Sometimes I have to make sure I've communicated correctly, so y'all shaking your heads, let me know I probably have. Yes, ma'am.
The other thing is, you gotta understand, are you willing to kill a person? I mean, you've gotta take that in your head. Because I do carry a gun. I do have a concealed weapons permit. And you know, I'm one nasty person that just in my general demeanor. So, y'all know it, come on.
You got the right one to introduce me. Okay.
But you gotta be willing, I mean, that's a big step. Taking another person's life is a big step, and are you willing to do that and live with that afterwards? So having a gun is not, you know, it's not all that what it's cracked up to be.
You know, one of the things that, and remember, if you go into a situation and the other person is unarmed, is that an unarmed encounter if you have a firearm? No. You brought the gun. The person can take, but for the longest time in law enforcement, about a third of the officers that we had shot in the line of duty were shot with their own firearms. And that kind of directed a lot of different training, a lot of things around safety equipment and retention holsters for law enforcement to kind of change that around. But remember, if you don't have that training and a retention holster and that kind of thing, odds are, depending on how the confrontation goes, if it's not well thought out, that weapon can be used against you just as easily as it could be used against an offender or somebody that's trying to assault you. Training is, yes, absolutely.
A little off the subject, but I was trying to kind of hone it a little bit closer to home. I'm with Exit Realty Vistas, and we're in Ardent, and we've already had a couple creepy calls, the best way to explain it. And I'm curious, have we had any close encounters that haven't made the news, or are there any statistics on how many people have actually been hurt other than Beverly, who's now become our poster child, so to speak?
I know of one in particular in Buncombe County, and I'm getting ready to cover that particular incident. We had another one. This gentleman went out to, and tell me your name again. I'm
Steve Lucina.
Steve Lucina. He was actually showing a property. Tell me a little bit about it. Go ahead.
It was a year ago, went out to a property that the owner called me and wanted me to go to assess the property. And
Go ahead. We can figure it.
so we were going up there on Saturday morning. Fortunately, I didn't go myself. I took Chip Thompson with me, who was a vendor that was going to assess the property and repairs. We couldn't get into the house. There was a guy in the house that had the front door barricaded. So we climbed in through the window, because I called the owner and I said, "Oh, nobody's there, right?" And his son and this buddy of his had left. Well, he didn't leave. We climbed in the windows. The guy comes out from around the corner with a hunting bow and arrow pointed at my chest.
No.
And I told him who I was. He knew who I was, and he knew that I was going to be there at some point, even though his relationship with his son had fallen apart. But anyhow, we walked around the house, did an assessment, got back in the car. This was Saturday morning, 10 o'clock. Monday, I called the owner. The owner said, "Well, I'll call the sheriff's department and have him go up and get him out." He was wanted for warrants anyhow.
We've been after him several
We've been
times.
after him, but I guess I profited the fact that deputies were going to go up there and knew that he was there. The deputies went up there. He shot at them with a bow and arrow, and they killed him. Now, had I gone there by myself, had my car, my computer, my wallet, my keys to my house, to business, everything else with me, didn't tell him. He wouldn't have told anybody that I was going up there. He could well have shot me and taken off with my car and done whatever. Would he have done that? I'll never know. But when I got up Thursday morning and watched the Channel 13 news, I saw that they had gone up and killed him. And after that, I talked to the deputies. They came and interviewed me because I wanted them to know what had happened to me in the situation. So, good reason, you know. Never would have thought of going to a house by myself. I would have gone by myself. Fortunately, I had Chip with me. I always tell Chip, I said, if you hadn't been there, he could have shot and killed me, and I could still be laying there months later, many months Nobody would have ever known that I was there. So, just a good situation to, you talk about red, and he came out from behind the corner, he's got a honey bow and arrow pointing at my chest. It was like, really on guard, but I calmly told him who I was, and he was like, oh, okay, and he just laid it down on the floor, and we walked through the house, and everything was fine, but it was a real shock to me Thursday morning when I watched the news about it, he got killed. So, don't ever go to a house by yourself out in the middle of nowhere where nobody could ever hear or see you, because you could get in the same situation as me, and had Chip not been with me, I may not be here. So.
That individual was wanted out of 2 states for, it was a sex offense. I think one forcible rape, and I'm trying to think, it was one on a child under a certain amount of age, and they have to register here. And we knew he had moved here, but he had failed to register. And the community was complaining because he was coming down and watching the school bus in the afternoons. And he was, he was a dangerous individual without a doubt. And we showed up there. The son told us later that what happened to you, he was doing that at one point when we went up to serve warrants on him, and he was standing behind the door waiting for the deputy to make entry. But the deputy knocked on the door, and there was no, and just because we have a warrant with that address, unless we have reason to believe that that person is in there, we can't just automatically make entry. And the deputy, for whatever reason, did not go through the door, because the guy was standing behind the door at full draw with a broadhead arrow on that hunting bow. But it turned out, as you guys saw about the news. Let me get these two. Yes, ma'am.
I had a personal incident a few months ago. I had a guy call me. He said he saw an open house ad in the paper and wanted me to meet him at a property. When we talked on the phone, he mentioned another address. And it didn't click with me until later that the 2 addresses he mentioned were 2 open houses I'd done, a month and a half apart, 2 completely different price ranges, completely different areas. And he wanted me to meet him at a house to show him the house. When he texted me the morning of, thank God he texted me and said, when you show me the inside of Fairview Roadhouse, can you please wear a soft windbreaker jacket?
He's the one that called our office.
Yeah. Everything in my body was like, whoa, don't go show that guy a house. And when I talked to him the first time, he was a little off and I couldn't figure it out. And he sent me the text, it was all one word, no spaces. And so of course, I called Asheville City and said, what do I do? And they said, really, there's nothing you can do.
But you can share the information. Here's the deal, and here's how we're starting to deal with a lot of situations with people who have the potential, but they haven't stepped over a line statutorily to where we can charge them or do anything
And he told
with
me he
it.
saw my picture and I was really pretty, and that's one of the things that made me go,
We call that a
whoa.
clue. Yes, ma'am. Very, very good. That's frightening. Are you guys sharing that information with the Board of Realty? There's probably, if you're not, that's probably something I could leave you with. It's a doable, like we do. We use Facebook, and we use some communication tools to communicate between different community watch groups out here that we leave. If y'all could post something up that's controlled, what's the
Black
thing?
Mountain Police actually spoke with him.
Yes.
Because I live in Black Mountain, and I thought he drove by my house, because it says in my bio I live in Black Mountain. And so I called the police office, the department, and I happened to be friends with one of them, and he came and he said, well, what's his name? And I told him, he was like, oh, I know him. So let me go talk to him. And he called me later and he said, well, we spoke with him, he knows to leave you alone. He said he's not gonna call you again, he meant no harm, he's a little slow. But that's
Yeah, we'll
scary.
talk a little bit more about that in just a second. Yes, sir.
Well, that is one of my agents, and that was a scary situation, but coming from a broker in charge point of view, and I can talk to anybody who runs companies in this town, it seems like this year has really sparked a lot of unique individuals to be out there about buying and selling. I've talked to many brokers in charge and firm owners, and all of them has told me that this year they have had more than ever before. Do you notice anything with your department stuff that it's been?
I don't doubt for a second that that's the situation you're seeing, because if something, I don't know, we might have an informational report on that only if somebody calls in, because there's nothing too much statutory that we can do to run down. I'm not gonna say that we say there's nothing we can do. Sometimes we have a name and an individual that we can go talk with that may take care of the issue, and that's a good thing. But a lot of times we may or may not have a name or an address or a location and a good end to be able to step up to have interaction with that person. I'm gonna probably have to ask Robin Michaelov's help here because I'm drawing a blank. What is the new Microsoft program that we use inside the office to share information? SharePoint. You guys familiar with SharePoint? SharePoint is a Microsoft product. It's there. It doesn't cost you anything to use. You can set up a security on it. The FBI uses SharePoint, so the integrity of the security around it is really good. If you wanted to set something up within the Board of Realtors to where you guys could share it, that's the most effective tool. It's kind of like a big Realtors community watch across the board, because everybody needs to know about your situation. And what we found out about sharing information, it has to be in a repository that you can get into, that you can go and get that information, but it's also open so other realtors can come in and post, and probably somebody at the Board of Realty would want to kind of take administrative rights to make sure that proper and appropriate things go on there. Yes, ma'am.
I mean, we have it right now on your bulletin board on the MLS, and have been people who have posted, watch out for this, you know, to get these calls. So, you know, you see that bulletin board every time you open up your MLS, check it. Make notes in there, please, help each other out here, you know.
Absolutely. Yes, ma'am.
I just wanted to talk about sellers also. There can be situations that sellers are felons and we don't know it. I listed a house for a guy, and it was in the upper 500,000-600,000. So you think this is you just do. So I listed the house. When I went to list the house, he was a single man. Yet in the basement there was a foosball table, a ping pong table, a huge screen TV with games, every kind of game you could think of. And I said, wow, do you have children? He goes, oh no, I have a nephew that comes to visit. And that was okay, but then I went upstairs and one of the bedrooms was decorated like a little girl, one was decorated like a little boy. And I said, do you have a niece? He said, yes. So I left it at that, but there was something, just that sixth sense was kicking in. And about 3 months after I had it listed, I got a call from actually one of your deputies at the Sheriff's Department. He said, Debbie, do you still have this listing? Because he used to work with me at one of the companies. And I said, yeah. And he goes, we need to get in there. He said, because the FBI and the SBI are both here with warrants. And my first inclination was to call the commissions, where do I stand? And of course they told me I have to follow so I went and they showed me the warrant for his arrest. He was wanted for multiple accounts of child molestation.
So you were exactly right with your assessment.
My assessment. I knew something wasn't right. I couldn't put my finger on it, but they waited until he got into South Carolina, because South Carolina does not have a bond. You can't set bail for child molestation in South Carolina. His sister, when we walked up to the door, I immediately got a call from his sister, and his sister wanted to know if I could take his computers out.
Take his what?
His computers.
Oh.
Because they'll go in forensically look at that. If it's on there, it's always on there.
He had a whole shelf, a whole wall that was filled with nothing but white labeled CDs or DVDs. And I thought that was weird.
Yes, ma'am.
I was in Dick's the other day looking at, and there was one you could buy with invisible UV ink, and it said that police could use it if you sprayed someone and they found them later, they could detect it on their clothes. Is that helpful to y'all or at all?
Probably would be us, because we have a blue light that can work on that with scene processing. But you know, a lot of times that's just a marketing tool for it would work. Not every police agency would have the ability to look at something to see if it had some UV paint in it or UV
I
dye.
was showing a girl property a few months back, and she was looking through bathrooms for prescriptions.
Oh, yes.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so I had to call the board, and I got her license plate, and they alerted. that-
Well, I'm getting ready to tell you one of the strangest ones that I've ever seen, but it's one that could have unraveled here in Buncombe County. It ended up unraveling in a county in Georgia as far as the violent part and the aftermath of how it reconciled, but it took place in Woodford at a house for sale. And I'll get to that in just a second, but I've got a questions part at the end, but we're doing it now, so we're good. I've got just a little bit more, but I want to go ahead and finish y'all's questions before we get there. Yes, ma'am.
Are you familiar at all with this new jewelry type thing that sends out, that has a little
Locator.
chip in it, locator in it, and you can just press it and it would send out a warning? It would just look like jewelry. It wouldn't look like something else that you were carrying, and it gives you your location and all. And would that be something that the police would ever monitor, or would that have to just go to like what your safety person or something?
I think it would probably, and I'm not familiar with it, I've not heard of any law enforcement agencies having access. I'm trying to think of the name of it, there's a monitoring bracelet that you can put on folks who have Alzheimer's, who have issues that the family can use, and we have a one-time cost for a locating device with that, but it's a different type use, but I imagine it's the same sort of technology that probably is intended for your safety person or somebody that you have personally monitor it. There may be some kind of a monitoring, kind of like a home alarm, that will monitor, like ADT, that will monitor those things and then call the police or the sheriff's office. I'm not familiar with them, but it's interesting. I think anything that you can do to do that would give you the ability to let somebody know, hey, I'm in trouble, come to where, as long as you've got those other provisions in place, your safety person knows where you're going to be, or somebody in your real estate office knows where you're going to be, then those things would probably be pretty effective. Yes, ma'am.
For people who don't have firearms, they may not think about this, but I just wanted informationally to let people know that we have, I don't know if it's every 3 months maybe, the gun show out at the Ag Center. They have a plethora of all of these things, chemical, electronic, impact. They're knowledgeable, they sell them, they'll educate you on them. So it is a great place to go and just shop for what you might want to use for your personal safety.
PF Guns, Phil Flack, who's one of the local dealers in the western part of the county, was a rep for Taser, for the civilian model of Taser. So if you go in and look, I think he's still selling those things, and that really is a pretty formidable deal. Did you have a question, sir?
Yeah, Sheriff. What do you think of this idea? I have my cell phone photographs automatically uploaded to the cloud once they're taken. If you couldn't meet somebody at the office, is that not a good option where you could take a picture of their car and their car tag if you got there after them, or if you got there before them in the house? From the house, you could take a picture of them as they walk up to the front porch, or just take a selfie and say, hey, for my safety, with them, or just take a picture of them, say, for my safety. It's in the cloud.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
They're not gonna mess with you.
You know, there's all kinds of technology things out there right now that can fit into your safety plan. It's just when you ask yourself the question, am I going to develop the discipline to do this every time? But having your phone upload to the cloud, as long as your family safety person or your real estate office knows that happens. So if your phone gets taken, if something happens to you and they take your phone, we know that we have that record, because we're going to look at that anyway, but it's probably good to have somebody that knows that your photos, and part of your personal safety plan is you take a picture of the tag or the individual, that it automatically uploads to the cloud, so if they get your phone, we can still find those photos. I think that's
Well,
pretty
but the
great.
deterrent that you could tell them this is the case.
Yes, anything that you put down, I mean, would a reasonable person care? No. And I think now with what's happening in Arkansas, people kind of would expect that. I would agree. Yes.
Realtors or any other employment related. So when somebody goes missing, is there a percentage that they're found alive?
To be honest with you, I don't know that any of that data's stored. I think you'd have to go in and